Will you now please be upstanding to receive the chairman, the chairman's chaplain and the managing director.
Good evening, members. May I introduce you Mr. Richard Isles, who will say prayers.
Words from Scripture say this: there is a time for everything and a season for every activity under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to scatter stones and a time to gather them, a time to embrace and a time to refrain, a time to search and a time to give up, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to mend, a time to be silent and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. This evening we have time together. As councillors, you have time to voice your concerns, your issues, all under the hearing of God. A moment of prayer. Father God, we come into your presence, recognising that you are here. We ask that all wisdom and understanding will be spoken and shared. We grant you access to this place, and may we know your presence. Be with each and every one of the councillors here as they conduct themselves. May they look to the betterment of the community in which they serve, and that the outcome will be of honour and glory. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you. You may either stay or go, as you wish.
I'm staying.
Thank you. Please be seated. Item 1 on the agenda, apologies for absence. Apologies received in the office are Councillor Iannu, Councillor Toby Mountain, Councillor Stanley and Councillor Oldham. Are there any others?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Councillor Daniel Efty can't make it.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs Mason. Mrs High. Thank you very much for that. Item 3. Oh, sorry, item 2. Going ahead of myself again.
Speed up the meeting.
Minutes of the annual meeting held on the 16th of May 2017 and of the extraordinary meetings held on the 31st of May 2017 and the 22nd of June 2017. Do we agree those? Now we're on item 3, to receive declarations of interest. Right. Councillor.
I need to declare a non-pecuniary interest in item 883 by virtue of being a member of Raleigh Town Council Working Party with regards to the toilets, public toilets.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Non-pecuniary interest as a member of Raleigh Town Council.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs Shaw. Councillor Mrs Lumley.
Thank you, Chairman. Non-pecuniary interest
Yeah.
Item 8.11, 12, and also as a member of Rayleigh Town Council.
Thank you. Councillor Spearing.
Non-pecuniary interest, Chairman, in relation to item 8.3. Although I did not participate in any of the discussions, I am a member of Rayleigh Town Council and aware of what was been going on there.
Thank you. Councillor Rowe.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Non-pecuniary interest, please, in item 8.3 as a town councillor, and I sit on a subcommittee for public conveniences. Thank you.
Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Non-pecuniary interest in item 8.3 by virtue of being a member of Rayleigh Town Council and a member of the working committee of the Crown Hill toilets.
Thank you. Before we carry on, can I please ask members... Oh, sorry, two more.
Thank you, Chairman. It's item 8.3 as a member of Rayleigh Town Council that I had no interest in regards to Crown Hill toilets. And item 8.1 and item 12 as a member of Sanctuary Committee. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Milne.
I've a non-pecuniary interest in 8.1 of the Ward Council.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
I'm non-pecuniary interest item 8.3 as being a member of the Ward Council.
Was there anybody else? Councillor.
Chairman, if it's felt necessary to declare being a ward councillor as an interest, I'll declare that on 8.1 as a ward councillor for Lodge.
No others. Right, can I please ask members of the public to refrain from disturbing the meeting and remind you that councillors have been democratically elected to make decisions at the District Council. If you continue to disturb the meeting, it will be impossible for councillors to hear all the points that are going to be made, and I will have to ask members of the public to leave the council chambers if they continue to disrupt the meeting. So please, so if you could please... Sorry, Councillor Black.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just a little bit surprised. I'm not familiar with members declaring non-pecuniary interest as ward councillors. I would have thought either you live close enough, if you live close enough, you'd have a pecuniary interest. Otherwise, as a ward councillor, I'm not familiar with members declaring in that way, that's all.
That is a matter for individual councillors to declare their own interests, but possibly with advice from
Chairman.
Ms. Law.
Yes, it's given the items on the agenda, and it was really in relation to the public conveniences and the Francis Cotty and the participation involved in the consultation. In the interest of transparency, you can declare non-pecuniary interest, but it's on my advice. Members wish to take it.
Thank you. Item 4. Item 4, announcements from the chairman, leader or head of paid service. I would just like to say just a few words that since becoming chairman, I've had the honour and privilege to represent our council to many events. I won't list all of them because there have been quite a number. They've been very varied, from schools to fairs, concerts for schools, open gardens, scouts. So just to let you know that I am getting around every part of our district and will continue to do so. And it's been very enjoyable meeting a lot of the residents and seeing what is going on in our district. Thank you. Anybody else want? No? Right. We're now on to item 5, public questions and member questions on notice. We have received public questions from Mr. Richard Lambourne. So, is he here?
We going? Right. In November 2016, the Planning Department, and this is a question for Ian Ward, the Planning Department and yourself issued several press releases about returning empty properties back into the housing stock. Owners were to be contacted, they were to be offered up to £1,000, and further to that, each property was to be visited. You personally were quoted in the local press stating that this will be a significant step in increasing the affordable housing available to the people on RDC's housing list. Can you confirm how many properties were visited? How many responses did you get? How many properties were actually returned to the housing stock, and at what cost? Finally, to those houses that were empty for many years, how many have been or are planned to be compulsorily purchased by the Planning Enforcement Department?
Thank you. Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you. As a response, the answers will be complete, so I'll read them slowly. The Planning Enforcement Service visited in the region of 100 properties using the resources of 2 students we had through the summer from Anglia Ruskin. They were in excess of 60 responses by email and approximately a further 20 by letter. 5 long-term empty properties, i.e. empty for at least 6 months, have been returned to use. Of these, 1 is now private rented, and following negotiations with the owner, has been nominated to the Housing Options Service for their exclusive use. This is a very good outcome and has increased our supply of affordable accommodation for those residents most in need. 4 are owner-occupied. Private housing continues to be the eyes and ears of our Housing Options Service for all empty homes grant inquiries, and where relevant, we'll talk to property owners about nomination partnerships. In addition, there are 6 further cases currently in progress, and the total spend to date on empty homes grants totals £4,000. Finally, in terms of those properties that have been empty for many years, none have been or are planned to be compulsorily purchased. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Lambourne, you may ask one supplementary question which is related to your question or to the answer, and that can take 1 minute.
Councillor Ward, there is one property.
Will you stand, please?
I didn't have to stand before.
Will you not stand? Well, according to the Constitution, should stand.
Shouldn't I have stood before? Do you want to read my question again?
No, thank you.
Councillor Ward, there is one property in our ward, in Woodlands Avenue, number 5, Woodlands Avenue, which has been empty for 30 years. Is that part of this programme?
Councillor Ward.
Yes, it is.
Thank you. Mm?
That's the end of that.
Yeah. Right, thank you. That's the end of that item. We will then go on to item 6, business from the last council meeting. There is none. Item 7. To note the minutes of executive and committee meetings held between the period of the 18th of April to the 11th of July as listed. Is that noted, members? Item 8. To consider any reports from the executive and committees to council. I think The first one is Councillor Burton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members will have seen that the attached report with recommendations put forward by the Review Committee. Members will know that this particular item has been discussed at length following considerable interest from the public. As Chairman of the Review Committee, I believe it was both important and useful to both members of the committee and to officers to fully understand the residents' concerns and to be aware of the facts surrounding the change of use of Francis Cotty Lodge and Clarence Road flats. I hope that members have had the chance to fully read the report and recognise that, in my opinion, the notes the committee has included, which are detailed in point 2.3 of the report, are equally as important as the recommendations also put forward by the committee. I hope that members will agree the recommendations contained within the report this evening. Thank you.
Councillor Webb.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I welcome the recommendations from Review and would like to thank them for all the hard work that has gone into this. As a council, we do have a tremendous opportunity to support those in our district who need support during difficult circumstances and to house them in temporary accommodation within our district. The fact that homeless households will be in one location allows support, where needed, to be provided easily. I recognise the recommendations that Review has made and would like to move a motion that I'm happy with these 3 recommendations. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Do we have a seconder?
Yes, Chairman.
You,
I'd already put my hand up.
That was mine.
I had already put my hand up with him.
well, I didn't see who was first. Did you want to second it?
I can confirm that.
Chairman, I wish to speak. I'm not interested in, the semantics of who seconded a motion.
Councillor Gooding.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to second the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. So we do have a motion on the floor. Councillor Mr Mason.
Thank you, Chairman. As a member of the Review Committee, I'm supporting the recommendation, which is now turned into a motion, which has been seconded. That doesn't change my mind at all. It has been discussed at very great length, over 2 hours at Review Committee, probably longer, and then again at a following Review Committee. Since then, I'd like to thank Louisa Moss particularly, because residents have been sending questions to members, all members of the council, and I've been sending them on to Louisa, and she's very kindly answered them all in depth and responded to additional questions, and these have been passed back to residents. So I'm very pleased that the council supported me and other members in this respect. However, I haven't changed my mind since I spoke at full council a couple of months ago. We know that the majority of people who become homeless nationally are those single, and I'm not advertising, I can say it, single mothers with children. And I really regret that councils had to send them to far-flung areas such as Kent, Harlow, Pitsea, yet alone Southend. And I welcome the opportunity to bring them back into the district. I would have liked there to have been other options available. I would have liked there to be a great number of other options available at the time when this was put forward by the council to Sanctuary. But it isn't the case, and I think we need to ensure that we do keep our residents in our district close to their friends and relatives and the children, their schools and friends. So I commend the motion in its completeness. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. Councillor Black.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, I mean, probably the key factors here are the last paragraph, sorry, last sentence on page 8.1.1. It was acknowledged that Rochford District Council did not have a right to instruct Sanctuary to do anything. And also on page 8.12, it was noted that Sanctuary owned Francis Cotty Lodge and that the council had the opportunity to assist the homeless residents of the district, but that improved processes were needed. It's a great pity, Madam Chair, in my opinion, that social housing still is no longer under local democratic control. We could have had different outcomes, better outcomes. But government ideology over the last 10 years or more has sent us down this road. And I think maybe the country as a whole will realise that some of that's been a mistake pretty soon. So I see the recommendations here. I assume under the third recommendation that we have the power to enforce the retention of nomination rights for at least 5 years. I would have liked to have seen some kind of warden installed at FCL because I think it would help the situation. Even for the first couple of years. I'm not particularly impressed at the moment with the way Sanctuary deal with cases of nuisance for their tenants caused by people outside. This is the other people, which residents are concerned here about nuisance from tenants. But I've been concerned about nuisance from outsiders on tenants, and I'm not particularly impressed with the way Sanctuary have dealt with that. So I would have liked to have seen a warden installed there to help for the first year or two at least. I don't see it happening, sadly. Unfortunately now we are fairly powerless in this respect. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. It's the first opportunity I've really had an opportunity to speak as ward councillor in regards to Francis Cotty. I do welcome Councillor Mason's words and his sentiments in regards to the whole situation. Of course, other solutions would have been preferable. There are many things that would have been preferable, but we were faced with a very serious situation that we had to deal with. And as it stands, this was the only way in which we could truly deal with it. I can understand what other members and their thoughts are on this, but I believe, as we have said in regards to how we're going to deal with Francis Cotty, is we will be looking and monitoring. I believe in the messages that have gone out from our Assistant Director, Louisa Moss, who has worked tirelessly in ensuring that we get the full nomination rights. This was something that was very, very important. We will be putting our own folk into Francis Cotty, our own folk who are at this moment in bed and breakfast. And we need to really look at that seriously. We have a moral duty, but not only that, we have a fiscal duty to everybody. We have to make sure that what we are doing is the right thing. And as I say, I can take on board exactly what Councillor Black has said. I definitely take on board what Councillor Mason has said, and I thank you for your words, because, you know, they are a strong point that we need to be together to understand that homelessness nationwide is a massive, massive problem that has to be dealt with. And it's not an easy subject, it's not an easy problem to solve, but we have to go about the best way of solving it. So thank you very much for this opportunity, Madam Speaker, to speak on it now. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cutmore.
Very briefly, Chairman, because I think it's all been said. I'm really pleased that this has come through. To echo the words of Councillor Ward, I think it's a real exceptional opportunity for us to grasp this, and the people I'm most pleased for are those people who are most unfortunate. God forbid that any of us here, through circumstances not of their own making, ever find themselves in a homeless situation. I'd like to think that they have a council that can act in the best interests of both them and their families going forward. We also now have a similar property in Rochford, which we're taking forward as well. And I think this is a much, much better solution than dispersing those people with the relative disruption to things like schooling and other things, jobs, etc., for those people who are in this situation. So I welcome them, Chairman, and I welcome and obviously support the recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Councillor Hookway.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Many weeks ago, when this whole process started, there was probably a number of people who thought that this process of the review committee looking at this in detail might have been a waste of time. I think what has happened since has showed that it hasn't, because it has allowed members to be much more informed about the whole process, and also the public who've had great concerns. There has been information which has come out through this process that we weren't aware of before, and we've been able to make appropriate recommendations, which is in part of this report. It also shows the limitations on the council in relation to this whole episode, but ultimately I back the recommendations in the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, members, we have a motion on the table for the recommendations. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. 8.2. Again, Councillor Burton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is one of 3 reports on Treasury management that the Review Committee sees and considers on an annual basis. Again, I trust members will have had the chance to review this report and consider the recommendations put forward by the Review Committee, and we'll be happy to agree these this evening. If any members have any questions or queries, I'm sure that our Section 151 officer will be only too happy to try and answer them. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Chairman.
Sorry?
Happy to note the report be noted.
Is that agreed, members?
Agreed.
The next item is 8.3. I believe Councillor Steptoe.
Thank you, Chair. And firstly, may I apologise for my voice. I've been struggling with it for some time now, so I do apologise to other councillors and the members of the public. As the Chair of the Investment Board, I'm pleased to present this report. And firstly, I would like to congratulate the officers and their teams, alongside with the portfolio holder, for all the hard work over the last couple of years that I've now gone into doing this. And I know there's been a lot of work behind the scenes. Indeed, there are still talks going on with 2 further parishes. The parishes and Town Council have also worked hard on this joint project, and I'd like to thank them for their support in this matter. Without their help, it would not have been possible. The report takes forward the decision made by previous full council to set out the business case whereby parish and town councils are given the opportunity to take the responsibility of running public conveyances for a 10-year period.
Excuse me, Chairman. We're having some talk in the back, and I'm trying to listen to Mike. Obviously, his voice isn't very good. Can we ask to refrain from the public, talking while we've got a speaker on the floor? Thank you.
Yes, please, members of the public. We are trying to conduct business here. If you could please be quiet.
Chair, I'll give it a moment and wait for people to leave.
Thank you, Councillor. Sorry about that. Can you continue, Councillor Steptoe?
Thank you, Chair. I'll repeat the last paragraph. The report takes forward a decision made by a previous full council to set out the business case whereby parish and town councils are given the opportunity to take the responsibility of running public conveyances for a 10-year period. The required budget of $330,000 will give a return on investment of approximately 15% and payback period of 4 years. This should be viewed as low risk project and secure an annual saving of $50,000 to Rochford Council. I would like to bring to the attention of members that the Council had previously agreed that disposal and closure of public toilets should be achieved by April 2018. Therefore, should we fail to agree this transfer of the toilet facilities to a parish or town council as set out in this paper, they will probably close. It's worth noting that a vote against the report will be a vote for closure. I therefore move that the Council accepts the report and the recommendation from the Investment Board as written on page 8.3.2, the last paragraph, and I also call for a recorded vote. Chair.
You need a seconder for the motion, Chairman. You will need a seconder. Okay, thank you. Yeah. I would invite Ms Worthington to do the recorded vote, please. Yeah. Oh, sorry, I think Councillor Eaves wanted to speak. Sorry. Right.
I think it's safe to say that we were all in agreement that in an ideal world we want to see new toilets in the areas that we represent. Members are we aware that I've been working on the members' advisory group of this project and have been reasonably understanding in the way that it's proceeded. However, having viewed what has been presented to us tonight and to the Investment Board, I have a number of concerns. Firstly, there are some factual errors in the report. I believe that the contract, although stated as being with SITA, is actually Suez. I believe that to be right. Thank you. Members were advised in the original report presented to full council on the 13th of February that we could not cherry-pick the toilets we were could open or close. It was a case of all or nothing. However, members will note that the report states on page 836 that Hockley Woods toilets will be singled out to stay open as it, quote, serves a specific amenity function. One has to wonder how the other toilets would be described if they don't serve a, quote, specific amenity function. Having had questions regarding the contract and the advice given to full council that we could not allow one toilet to stay open and the others to close, I asked to view the contract that the council has with Suez. Having viewed that contract, I can report to members that the opposite is actually true, in that we can actually vary the contract however we deem necessary, and that it does not carry any financial penalty. I emailed a request to Member Services on Thursday last week asking for a copy of the minutes to the last Members Advisory Group held on the 15th of June and a recording of the presentation made to the Investment Board on the 11th of July, the purpose of which was to ensure that I could be accurately informed on the consideration for the Investment Board report that was before us tonight. The reply I received told me that they would not be available until after full council had discussed the project. What concerns me most is that I wonder what the actual motive of the exercise really is. The answer that you'll be given loudly and clear is that due to budget cuts we have to make hard decisions, and if we don't take those decisions now we will have no other option than to close the toilets without any substitute. I would remind members that when we discussed the issue back in February that I offered a costed alternative that would meet the budget requirements, keep the toilets in Rochford District Control and avoid the issue of spending vast amounts of money from our capital budget and of officer and member time in exploring direction but that every time I raise this point, it has been brushed aside. This was one of the reasons why I was asking for the minutes of the Members' Advisory Group, which we don't have. I visited the Hockley Parish Office and in conversation with the clerk was told that he had not been given a timescale for closure of the Hockley toilets. That's what he said, which we are now aware of. I want to challenge the members of the administration, specifically those members representing Hockley and Hockley and Ashington, to consider their position here tonight. I've taken the trouble to find out from the residents that I represent what the feeling is in Hockley regarding closure of the public toilets. The overwhelming response has been to keep them open. Under the proposal before us tonight, Hockley toilets will be closed without a substitute alternative, and due to the current circumstances, there is no start date for that item that is exempt.
We're not talking about public toilets at all here. I don't know why it's being brought up, because it's not part of what we're actually deciding.
Okay, I'll withdraw that. I'll finish there. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Councillor Sperring, did you want to say something?
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Hott and myself, as you're all aware, were tasked with trying to work out a leasing arrangement with Rayleigh, Holbridge and Rochford councils. We have done this. We've met these councils on more than one occasion over many months. We've answered every question that these councils have presented to us. We've answered lease questions. We know that they have liaised with each other. They fully understand what they are committing themselves to. They fully embrace the opportunity to take on a responsibility of their own within their own areas. The financial situations has been approved by our Principal Finance Officer and our 151 Officer as being justifiable and a good move for the District Council. The parishes and the Town Council are fully, as I said, fully aware of the financial commitments, and while nobody knows what's going to go on in the future, they understand at the moment they're not capped. That may change in the future. They are already out, as I understand, looking for further third-party relationships to assist with this, and I would suggest, Chairman, that we move to the vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I hear what you say about moving to the vote. There were two people waiting to speak, so Councillor Black.
I'd just like to start with a question, please. The move of the motion stated that if this motion was rejected tonight, this would lead to the closure of all the toilets. I'd like officer advice, please. If this motion is rejected tonight, then would the toilets close in due course without any further decision of council? Or would a decision of council or another element of the council have to be made to close those toilets? Could I have the answer to that first, please, Madam Chairman?
Work now? Oh, thank you. Right, hello. The original report that was taken to full council in December stated that we would seek basically that all public toilets, with the exception of those at Hockley Woods, are disposed of by closure and sale or through transfer of the asset upon a long-term lease to the relevant town/parish council. The disposal of these assets to be completed by April 2018. So my understanding is that that was the recommendation that was approved in December, and the member advisory group, which was referred to, was to be set up to sort of oversee, if you like, to ensure that the impact of the closure was minimised. But nevertheless, the closure has, in effect, already been decided by that sort of a decision. Certainly. It says that all public toilets, with the exception of those at Hockley Woods, are disposed of either by closure and sale or through transfer of the assets upon a long-term lease to the relevant town/parish council. The disposal of these assets to be completed by April 2018. The authority to be delegated to the assistant. So the next point down goes on to, if I pick through here, which one's the most relevant for yourself. So it says the authority be dedicated to the Assistant Director of Environmental Services in consultation with the portfolio holder for environments and the portfolio holder for enterprise to oversee the closure and sale of public toilets as above, subject to appropriate public consultation. And added to that was consultation with member advisory group. But nevertheless, closure is very much in the gift of the portfolio holders to decide. Yes, that's correct, yes.
So a decision tonight by council executives would not automatically lead to closure. It would need a decision to close.
It would trigger, if you like, further meetings of the member advisory group to oversee the public consultation.
I'm applying to that, Chair. So decision Thank you. Of course, we're very, from a selfish ward member's point of view, this is great for my ward because Rayleigh, the downhill part of my ward, would be paying through their Rayleigh Town Council tax towards Rayleigh toilets. The Roworth residents who would use the Rayleigh toilets wouldn't pay anything at all. So from a very selfish ward point of view, this is great. However, I try not to be a selfish ward councillor, and I have to look at other parishes which are facing closure of their toilets completely. And I find that very hard to accept and very hard to support. Apparently these parishes are like Voldemort. You can't mention their name tonight. But I think we know what we're talking about. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Final question, comment from Councillor Mr Mason.
Thank you, Chairman. I wasn't going to speak actually, but as Councillor Steptoe has stated that any vote against is a vote for closure, I feel I have to stand and clarify my position. I voted against the proposal last time it was raised at full council. I've seen nothing to change my mind. I objected on the grounds of passing the cost to a non-capped council or non-capped councils. I don't think that's ethical, and I believe we should, in this council, be undertaking the highest standards of ethical behaviour, and I don't see it as ethical at all. And I don't think the residents will see it as ethical, because when it comes down to it, they won't be paying any less. The public purse will have received no significant benefit. So to claim a 15% yield on the capital employed, I'm afraid, is smoke and mirrors. And if you want to put it to the public, I voted for closure. I'll happily explain why I did. And I am pretty sure they'll understand my approach to finances. So it's not a vote for closure. It's a vote against a process which transfers cost from one council to another where the other is not capped, in a situation where the cabinet of this country, of this government, has declared that austerity remains. That's not a benefit to austerity. If you ask me, could we make savings elsewhere and retain this in the district council? Yes, we could. And before someone else stands up and says I've got something else to add, even though the debate's closed, I'll say the cabinet members could give up their special allowances. That would be enough to pay for it. The chairman has closed the debate, so I leave it at that. I shall be voting against, Chairman. Thank you.
Right, if we can go to the vote now, please. And it's a recorded vote.
Councillor Black.
Against.
Councillor Burton. Councillor Mrs Butcher. Councillor Carter. Councillor Mrs Cassar. Councillor Cooper. Councillor Cutmore. Councillor Dray. Councillor Eaves. Councillor Gooding. Councillor Griffin. Councillor Hazelwood. Councillor Hookway. Councillor Mrs Hoy. Councillor Mrs Hughes. Councillor Lucas Gill. Councillor Mrs Lumley. Councillor Mrs Mason. Councillor John Mason. Councillor Merrick. Councillor Milne. Councillor Newport. Councillor Mrs Rowe. Councillor Mrs Shaw. Councillor Smith. Councillor Sperring. Councillor Steptoe. Councillor Ward. Councillor Webb. Councillor Mrs Weston. Councillor Williams. Councillor Wilson.
That is carried. Thank you. 21 for, 11 against. Yeah. The next item is item 8.4. Councillor Burton, I think you were going to deal with this one.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I trust that members will find this short report put forward by the Review Committee to be fairly self-explanatory and agreeable. The subject matter of this report was discussed informally at first. However, the decision to make it formal and bring it forward to a report to full council this evening was a unanimous cross-party decision. I trust that members will agree this evening. Thank you.
Councillor Webb.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I welcome this recommendation from review. On Friday, I attended the Save A&E meeting in Hadley and heard firsthand Dr Howard speak again. She mentioned Rochford in her meeting and how this allowed the concerns to be brought to a head as we were able to hear from both sides of the debate. I'm pleased to say that in this district we played a part in allowing the clinicians to speak out, and that as a Conservative group we specifically asked that the lead A&E consultant be invited to speak. I would like, therefore, to ensure that when representation from the NHS are invited to speak again, that Dr Howard is also specifically invited. If she is not specifically invited to speak, then she will not be able to attend. It is important to hear both sides from those at the highest level, including senior clinicians. I have heard rumours at the Save A&E meeting on Friday night that the news of the prevention of the downgrading of Southend A&E is imminent. If and when this happens, we can be proud that Rochford Council has played its part. So, I would like to endorse this recommendation, but to add to it a motion that Dr Howard be specifically invited along as part of this. Thank you very much, Madam Chairman.
Councillor Gooding.
Thank you, Chair. This is a very emotive subject regarding the changes suggested by the STP, and I would like to second this motion. Thank you.
Hmm? Thank you. Councillor Mason.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, I wasn't going to speak tonight, so I apologise to all those who are fed up with hearing anything from me. I'd just like to remind everyone in the chamber that the original motion was it was accepted as cross-party, and that it is a cross-party decision to ask this council to take the matter at full council in review. So there's no need for party politics, to be drawn into this. Although if others want to bring it in, they can. They're just showing themselves up, for a rather pathetic point. The question I would ask is, will the success regime allow Dr. Howard to sit on the same panel as them? I hope they do, but I've got some doubts that they will. Also, Chairman, I was away. I was enjoying a holiday when the debate, which I didn't know when it was going to happen, would take place. One thing I was disappointed in is that the council made no motion. We didn't make a motion to say we agreed or didn't agree with the success regime's proposals. So at the moment, we're technically sitting on the fence, apart from my good friend Councillor Black, who suggested that the council was more or less against. That was as far as it went. So, Chairman, when it does come back, and I hope it comes back as a result of a consultation, I hope the success regime, if they're going to continue to go ahead, will bring this to a public consultation. That we have a debate on the consultation, and at last this council asks all members to participate in a motion against the success regime's proposals. Otherwise, our position is not recorded. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Mr Mason. Yes, my understanding was that when they came along and presented, it wasn't for us to make a decision at that stage, but we did understand that the consultation is going until starting in December with the public. But thank you very much. So we've got council is. Who did? Okay, Councillor Cutmore, did you want to speak? Okay, thank you. So it's proposed that the council resolves that the NHS be invited to attend a future meeting of council to provide an update on the success regime prior to the end of the public consultation period in December 2017. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Yes, with Dr. Howard invited, that will be in the recommendation. Thank you. Item 9, report on urgent decisions. Is that noted, members? Item 10, report of the leader of the work of the executive. Councillor Cutmore.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Members should have a copy of this on their desks. This is the first ordinary full council meeting of the 2017-18 municipal year, and I would like to welcome all members. Matters that my colleagues and I on the executive have been dealing with include approving the Air Quality Action Plan for Rayleigh for submission to the Department of Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, delegating authority to the Assistant Director Environmental Services to implement the regulations and in turn provide authorisation to designating officers within the Council to issue fixed penalty notices for fly tipping, noting formal responses to Chelmsford City Council's local plan, preferred options consultation, and to the Department for Communities and Local Government Housing white paper consultation, accepting the South Essex Strategic Housing Market Assessment, known as SHMAR, addendum as part of the evidence base for the new local plan. As always, Chairman, I would be happy to take any questions from members in respect of the work of the executive, and I'm sure my executive colleagues will be happy to contribute where appropriate. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Cutmore. Councillor Black.
Always glad to keep the executive happy, so I've got a question. With regard to the air quality action plan, when do we envisage the situation improving so that the air quality management area can be revoked?
Thank you, Councillor Black. I'll just check the documentation and get the answer back to you in a couple of days, if that's okay. Thank you. I'll copy in all members. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I don't have any knowledge of Chelmsford City Council's local plan. I haven't read anything about it. Could we have some background information? Thank you.
Through you, Chairman, it'd be rather difficult to go through a local plan in its detail. May I suggest that the member actually has a look through the minutes and the papers for the executive, and you'll find all the information there, Chairman. If he doesn't, please contact me.
Right. Thank you very much. Now go on to item 11, motions on notice. There are none. Item 12. Sanctuary Housing Association Development Programme. Mr Scrutton.
Thank you, Chairman. At the council meeting on the 25th of April, I was asked to have a discussion with Sanctuary, along with the leader of the council, Councillor Cutmore, to gain some understanding of the proposals by Sanctuary in relation to the 363 properties that they were to commit to by 31st of March 2018. Key point, I think, from the report, and I've set out some detailed information around the delivery of mechanisms for the delivery of affordable housing, but I think the two key points to note, Chairman, relate to the interpretation of the specific clause in the deed of variation that relates to the 363 properties. And as I've said in the report, that there is nothing in the deed of variation that restricts the delivery of the 363 to being all affordable houses within the government's current definition of affordable housing. The second point I think I'd bring to members' attention is the progress to date in relation to the delivery of or the commitment to the 363 houses. And if you look at paragraph 3.1 of the report, you'll see that to date, in terms of current schemes, Sanctuary Housing Association has 236 new units on the way, of which 122 are affordable rent and 56 shared ownership, so that's 75 of that total to date. And in the pipeline there's a further 268 dwellings, of which 105 are likely to be affordable rent and 55 units of shared ownership. So that's the findings of the conversation with Sanctuary Housing Association. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Webb.
I'd like to propose a motion that I support this recommendation, which shows the work that Sanctuary Housing is doing to promote housing in this area. Much of this housing is either affordable or is shared ownership, and in so doing is helping us to meet the needs of our local residents. I'm glad to hear that the Council will receive regular updates on this, which is welcome, and this will also enable us to continue to monitor progress. So I'm pleased to propose a motion that I support this recommendation and that it be noted by Council. Thank you.
Councillor Ward.
Madam Chairman, I'd like to second that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mr John Mason first.
Thank you, Chairman. This was one that I had decided to speak on. However, I wasn't really prepared for the revelations about affordable housing that I saw on the national news this evening. Various concerns about the delivery of affordable homes, concerns that affordable homes were being swapped for money. So it occurred to me that I really must delve into this a bit more, and certainly on the public record. I want to ask some questions, Chairman. Why did the Council largely forgive the delivery of 50 affordable homes per year over 10 years when its housing register and those on it were increasing? Now, members in Review Committee drew this to my attention, but I haven't had an answer to that question from anywhere, so I'm going to ask it. And then, in terms of the sort of thing I expect when I negotiate an agreement, I expect to fix the broad and important terms of an agreement at the beginning. So I really want to know why the Council didn't fix the numbers and tenure for delivery at the outset of the new agreement. I can't understand why, and this was something that caused Review Committee to look at it. There is another question, and it concerns the members of our Sanctuary Committee. And I'm going to ask, Chairman, and you may not know the answer, but I'm sure the members of the Sanctuary Committee will know, and they can respond. Has this agreement and the development programme that's underlying been discussed by members of the Council at the Sanctuary Committee? Because that's quite important. The other thing that really worries me is where we stand at Development Committee. Because here we are as a council, and we're all here, or at least we're invited here tonight, have all agreed previously to this 8th of June agreement, and we're asked to recognise the effects of it tonight. But if we're on the Development Committee, or we're substitutes, aren't we in some way fettered because we've actually entered an agreement with a developer to deliver a number of houses? And it's not in the core strategy. These are windfalls. So I'm a bit concerned about the position we've taken ourselves to and how we're going to deal with that. I'm sure our legal officer can deal with that. So those are the questions, Chairman. I'd be obliged for answers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman, if I may, perhaps I can start on the last point. In fact, I'm not aware, and I'd need to look through the information that I have, which I can't share in detail with the committee. Because of legal restrictions that are placed on the Council by Sanctuary Housing Association in relation to their negotiations on the dwellings that they're proposing to deliver. But from memory, I think the majority of the dwellings that are being delivered through the programme that Sanctuary have developed in the district are not actually windfalls. They are part of the overall housing delivery. So, for example, in the same way as CHP Housing Association bids for and wins the nearly 200 houses that are part of the 35% provision on Hall Road, those are not windfalls. Those are part of the policy process that the Council has agreed through its development plan documents, and a significant portion of the dwellings that are proposed to be delivered by Sanctuary, I think, are coming through that through that mechanism. Chairman, in relation to the other questions, I'm not sure that really officers can give an answer to those. Those questions, I think, relate to decisions that were taken by the Council in the P&C discussion in relation to the deed of variation, and those are subject to a Council decision.
Yes.
Well, I'm really glad that this is in open session, because we have members of the public here, and I know members So, although this is an open session, I would like answers to those questions, Chairman. I recognise they can't be given tonight, but may I ask the Managing Director to answer these questions in writing on purple paper as exempt to all members, please? I don't think it's right just to leave them up in the air because they can't be answered at this point because of the constraints. Do I have an agreement with that, Chairman? Yes or no?
Are you going to do that?
Chairman, I'm happy to respond. Whether I'll be able to provide an answer to the questions, specifically as set out by the councillor, we'll have to decide when you see my response.
Okay.
If that's.
I think.
Recorded, so you won't have me picking up exactly what they're saying. Can I take issue? Unless of course I'm wrong, in which case I'll apologise. Isn't the Bullwood development a windfall? Excuse me, that's not part of our allocation of sites. So I don't think that's correct. It's a significant number of houses, 60. Remember the whole, is it 60? The 60 or 75 or whatever the number is, count against that 363. So it's quite significant. So I don't agree, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. I think what's in the agenda tonight is this was a full council request to get the progress and the update of what was happening, and it is really for noting. So I think all these other questions perhaps will have to be asked elsewhere.
Chairman, okay, I've got the Chairman of Review Committee here. This is a response to the Review Committee report. I think those questions are still outstanding. Will he agree to put it on the agenda for Review Committee on the next time it meets? Thank you, Chairman.
I think what we have now is the recommendation for this to be noted. Thank you, Councillor Cutmore. I did have Councillor Mrs Mason to speak. Do you still want to speak?
Thank you. Very briefly, because believe it or not, I can't read my husband's writing and I don't think he can read mine, so he's covered most of the points that I was going to ask. I was also going to ask who made the decision, how was it made, because it's not been made clear, so perhaps we could add that onto the Review Committee. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Okay, so can we note this resolution now? Is it noted? Thank you. Item 30.
I'm very confused, and excuse me for standing on a point of order, but Councillor Webb proposed a motion. That motion was seconded, or have I?
Yes. Seconded
So
by Councillor.
why have we had a motion which has just descended into nothing? It's just disappeared.
Sorry? Do you agree the motion? Agree. Thank you. Item 13. Returning Officer and Electoral Registration Officer interim arrangements. Angela Law, yes, thank you.
Yes, members, this is further to the departure of Nicholas Khan. This is just to ensure business continuity for elections and to appoint the roles of Returning Officer and the Electoral Registration Officer on an interim basis to your Managing Director. Following and a third recommendation that following the appointment of Strategic Director, that those roles be appointed to him or her. Thank you.
Is that agreed, members? Item 14, Mr Scrutton, please.
Chairman, thank you. Just three amendments to the pay policy set out in this report. The first relates and is explained in paragraph 3.5 of the pay policy, which is page 14. Apologies, Chairman, I'm looking at a different version of the page 14.5, so paragraph 3.5. So that's relating to posts evaluated at PO 1820s, 18 to 20. It's a slight adjustment in the pay scale for grades that relate to the Joint Council for Local Government Services. The two other adjustments to the policy relate to the appendix at the back of the report, page 14.9. Chairman, those relate to the establishment of appropriate pay scales for the strategic director and for myself, Chairman. Thank you.
Is that agreed? Right. Item 15, exclusion of the press and public. Is that agreed?